Our event today has been subsidized by the amazing Connecticut Poet Laureate Margaret Gibson, who received a grant from the Academy of American Poets for her Green Poetry Initiative. So most of you know what Margaret is doing in Connecticut, I would imagine, but workshops that have, everything's been compromised a little bit because we need to, but workshops, an amazing anthology, I think the deadline just passed, of environmental poetry, all by Connecticut poets, and green poetry cafes. So we're really, really glad that we were able to make this one happen outside. Somehow it didn't seem possible to do a green poetry cafe inside, even though we might need to in the future. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to start by introducing our first opening voice, and that's Joan Hoffman. Joan is the author of 3 chapbooks of poetry. One of them is available here. The proceeds for the sale of Joan's book go to the Sierra Club, and Joan also donated her proceeds, her stipend today, to the Sierra Club. So that sort of says a lot more, says a lot about Joan. Joan was the first poet laureate of Canton, Connecticut, served that role for 4 years, and she's the professor emerita of St. Joseph's University in Hartford, Connecticut. Joan, I met you in Hartford at your event about 2 years ago, and you said it would be really great to read there sometime. I'm so glad that sometime is today. Welcome.
Yeah, I live in Canton. It's a little bit of a trek from here. It's quite wonderful to have a reason to come down for this, and wonderful that this weather turned out for today. Gorgeous. I'm just going to read for you a few poems. Some things that have happened to me lately, some things that have happened in the last couple of years. 3 poems and a short. They're in the books that are available here. Hope you might be encouraged by donating, by buying the books, donating to the Sierra Club. I've long been a lover of the green world, I'll call it that way, and that's a part of my life in Canton. I live near the Farmington River. I don't know what you've been doing during the pandemic. I've not been around this many people in a long time. It's a little scary. But thank you all for coming. It's wonderful. Now, I've been spending a lot of time reading and writing like usual, but a lot more time than usual hiking and walking, which are my usuals. And I've also been noticing things around my village in Collinsville, a lot more. And one of the things is some development that's been happening in my little village. And part of that development has happened in the lot right across from me. So this poem comes from that. It's called The Takedown, a Lament. I watched giants felled one after another, and the clearing took hours. For hours, I watched in horror an efficiency of decimation. In a single day, the lot next to me transformed from an assurance of green-filled, broad canopy, sustained by 60-foot-high trunks, a beauty of curved-barked stills, into a cleared space of disappeared. The maples now gone, and until now, unseen interior is exposed. Is this awkward gawking addictive or just inherited? I'm both curious and crestfallen while staring. I'm not the only one disoriented. Like fingernails of dirt, some things you just can't forget. The chew, chew, chew of the cardinal, the silhouette of the maple at daybreak, the mating pileated woodpeckers, the hoot, hoot, hoot of the owls, the bone chill noise of the chainsaw, the split crack and thud of the drops, The story's high pile of brush. Brush, such a light word for huge limbs that shook earth today. The scream ring of the chipper grinding. Everyone's nest has been upended in the silence of emptiness, under the spareness of a too blue sky. A scatter of sparrows arrives, one bird after another, to make a necklace on top of the new chain link fence. Each stands facing the same direction, toward the empty, barren void, space of the uprooted, missing. It was a very sad day. It continues to be sad for me to look just across the way. You know, when you're used to your own horizon, your own silhouette. I've lived in that house for over 30 years. Those were my trees. They're gone. So I had to write about that. But similarly, we're taken by our encounters with the wildlife where we are. And this next poem is about that. And like anything related to a loss or a strong encounter, it brings back earlier ones. And in this case, this encounter was with a deer that brought back some thoughts and feelings about an earlier squirrel. Why our eyes met, two on one. Because I was driving down Bushy Hill Road that Thursday afternoon, early October, because deer species have elliptical eyes that can move and dilate unlike human pupils, because day's end calls us, me and you, person and creature, to change scene and proximity, because you, dear, were crossing Bushy Hill Road that afternoon, just before I drove to where you were crossing it. Because it was an otherwise uneventful day in which I was not concerned with matters of life and death, or even a sick friend, because drivers move cars slowly when there's a danger of a scene to be taken in. Because sitting in a car puts you about eye level with a deer's head height. Because the population of white-tailed deer in Connecticut continues to increase. Because deer have exquisite night vision with retinas filled with photoreceptors, but it wasn't night yet. Because when deer look into oncoming headlights, they're blinded by the light and don't move. Because I'm a person who has to look, especially when there might be reason to look away. Because the first time I hit a squirrel, it was on a street like Bushy Hill, but in New Jersey, lined the same with a canopy of maples and evergreens on both sides. Because the officer directing drivers was maneuvering two direction, rush hour traffic, so cars moved silently, like a caravan following a hearse. Because you were no longer in a hurry to be anywhere else. Because you'd been hit, dear, but not hurt so much that anyone could tell. So you stood in the middle of the road, still, parallel, with the yellow center lines. Because even if your tall legs could carry you, there was nowhere to go, while bumper-to-bumper car streams encircled you on both sides, an anomaly of the macadam. Because a mile down the road, a traffic light signaled cars to come to a dead stop every few minutes, for a few minutes, stopping the caravan. Because the sound made by the tire hitting the squirrel was a dull thud that shot through the brake pedal till my right foot slammed down hard. Because I have a history of bringing wounded animals to get care and be made well again. Because my brother's a veterinarian, and I was sure to tell him that I'd seen you, and he would ask me questions that I'd want to answer accurately. Because animals, like deer, transect the maze of roads laid down many times a day. Because waiting in the line of cars, I spotted you in the center of the road, pointed hooves straddling the double yellow lines, your white backside defined, white tail down. Because you, dear, have millions of scent receptors in your nose, inches from your eyes, and though I didn't smell you, I know you smelled me, which made me cautious, because your antlers were big, maybe fully grown, and as I drove closer to you, they seemed huge and dangerous. Because close looking is something I do, especially in the woods, but I'd been told it's best to observe deer from a distance, because you were spooked as I was to be in that unexpected spectacle, eerily quiet. Because encounters with deer are laden with fear of hurtful hooves and unpredictability. Because, dear, you are wild, and I've been raised to avoid making direct eye contact with wild animals, even one so beautiful as you, certainly one so big. Because you'd been lithe and could swiftly wheel with grace, but were now rendered statuesque in tableau. Because your heart must have been bursting. I heard mine thumping. Because you're nocturnal, and that night you wouldn't see moonlight through branches, stars from the side of the woods, or bed down with kin. Because when I pulled alongside you, I passed your white, quivering flank, paralleled your long, brown abdomen, within reach had I opened the window to stroke you. Because I didn't stop for that squirrel, and luck had me stopped in traffic on your right, dear. We were shoulder to shoulder, facing forward together. Because your head remained straight down the road between ribbons of cars, no squirrel in sight, your one white-brimmed brown eye at arm's reach, the other side of the glass from me. Because with my eyes focused toward the windshield, feeling you looming on my left, my peripheral vision begged me to turn my head toward yours. Because when it seems there might be a reason to look away, I'm a person who has to look. Because your large, long-lashed, horizontal, oval eye peered back, moist and dull dark blank, as though not seeing, reflecting me in a shiny silver Camry. Because I smelled you. Your closeness was staggering. You thrilled me, scared me, filled me with your trauma. Because now, when I drive on Bushy Hill Road, I see you, dear, and I look not toward the center line, but to the woods, as though you'll leap in front of me through the air. That's the longest poem I've ever written. I have one other sort of short poem and then a send-off. I told you one of the things I've been doing a lot of is hiking. Yes, I did a 9-mile hike of a section of the Appalachian Trail yesterday in Massachusetts, out at Topsmead the day before. Beautiful out there. Beautiful days these, just perfect. But I've also been doing a lot of walking around and hiking in my own town of Canton. The Land Trust has some wonderful, wonderful trails there, and a couple of them have become my favorites. And on one in particular this spring, I fell in love with vernal pools. So this is called Here a Vernal Pool Reflects. In concert with other pools, it renders the forest floor into abundance, thrilled in moss. Framed by lichen-rich trees, straight trunks reach skyward, while windswept downed kin lie askew. Carpeted in spring greenness, ephemeral shallows here today may disappear tomorrow. These are but temporary depressions, vessels without visible ingress or egress. Seasonal ponds flooded up, enough for amphibian attraction. Spotted salamanders, shrimp nymphs, wood frogs, among the lovers of elusive. To this place, I walk miles each day to be among the still pools, holding my breath at the outcrop to scan landscape. Who is still here? Which of you has departed? Which wanes into another form of itself, passes to vanished? Thanks very much. And for you, I have a 4-line send-off. Listen up, you could miss it. Love. A 3-year-old daughter about her 5-year-old brother asks mother, "Since Robbie's your son, can I be your moon?" Thank you.
I opened your book this morning, Joan, and opened to that poem, that 4-line poem. I so wish I had written it. I thought I wrote all the really good kids' poems, but you haven't. Your reading was extraordinary. Thank you, Joan. What a way to open. What a way to take us from traffic and busyness and fear into a place of grace and reverence for the natural world. Thank you, Joan. Our next reader today is Steve Straight. Where are you, Steve? Thank you for being here. Steve was a professor of English and director of the creative writing program at Manchester Community College for many, many, many years. He ran an amazing poetry series there. I say that from experience, having been one of the poets that he brought in. And you cooked for me, you had a beautiful dinner for me, and I got to walk through these hallways into that auditorium and just see pictures of me and my dog. You treated me so well, Steve. In another time, we'd have the walls splattered with pictures of you too, but we're just gonna listen the best that we can today. Steve has 2 books of poetry. He's got one of them here today. The most recent one is The Almanac. The Water Carrier, which was his book prior to that, was featured nationally on Garrison Keillor's Writer's Almanac series. Steve has taught extensively around the country, teaching about writing, teaching about teaching. He's taught in Ireland. He's received many awards from the state of Connecticut for his lifetime commitment to the arts, and we welcome him here warmly. Come on up, Steve.
I see some nice masks out there, and there's nothing that can beat this parasol right here. I'm going to leave my hat on. It's very unusual for me to read with a hat on, but it's bright over there. Thanks very much, Lisa. Thanks to Margaret. I imagine Margaret had something to do with me being here as well. Thanks to Joan. Great to see you again. I'm going to start off with this poem. This is a sampling of poems, all having to do with nature and the environment. You could say, I think the mini little theme would be lost things and found things. And sometimes the thing that's found is simply awareness. This is called Wildlife Trail. It's the name of a street in my town now, South Windsor, Wildlife Trail. Perhaps it was naive of me to turn down Apple Orchard Lane, past the new McMansions with their pairs of spindly new maples, and expect to find at the end of the street an apple orchard. I should have known there are no longer foxes on Fox Run, no blueberry bushes sagging with fruit on Blueberry Circle, and of course no old farm on Old Farm Road, no farm at all. Eventually it dawned on me that the one thing I would not see on Pheasant Way, Quail Run, and Woodcock Lane is a pheasant or a quail or a woodcock, having long ago departed for some small remaining rectangle of space. Named for what they replace or drive out, like the generic doom of Wildlife Trail, They might as well be called Dodo Avenue, or Passenger Pigeon Place, or Woolly Mammoth Terrace. Why not some honest names for these mausoleum streets? Overconsumption Highway, maybe, or Entitlement Circle, or perhaps just the Boulevard of Greed. So you got yourself into that applauding after every poem business. That's a mistake. You know, there may be a poem you don't want to applaud after, and now you're stuck. Watching the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, seeing Christine Blaney Ford testify, I wondered how the senators would treat nature if she were called to testify. In this case, the nature called Gaia. And if they called her to testify about what's happening on Earth. So this is a little poem called Entropy. These poems get progressively darker and then they get lighter. I'll just warn you. Entropy. As a hurricane of images rushes by, cold ash toxins spilling into rivers of hog waste lagoons, plunging toward the sea, carrying the flotsam of a civilization, history and science and rational thought scraped from town after town in its path toward an ending beginning to come into focus, gulls shrieking under a blazing sun as a stiff breeze comes in off the ocean, plugs of oil sludge bobbing in the waves. Suited officials in a distant room tighten the knots of their prejudices, lean forward on their chins to feign listening as the senator from South Carolina gavels the hearing open in the stifling room with 3 resounding thunks as flashbulbs pop. The witness sits at the oak table, demure in a dark green suit, fingers folded patiently. Miss, it's Ms. And there is the smirk, subtle yet arrogant. Very well, Ms. Gaia. Now, could you describe your claim that you were violated? This poem is called Cruising, and it imagines we are all on a very large ocean-going vessel called the Apocalypse, something like the Titanic. There's a reference to rosewood violins at the end. These were found years later from the Titanic, and they were practically intact. Rosewood is so resistant to salt water and everything else. And this is dedicated to Tony Hoagland. I happened to see Tony Hoagland read right in that building many moons ago. Cruising. We're standing on the top deck of the Apocalypse, prestige level, its wastewater fouling the sea in our wake as off in the distance the moonlit iceberg of awareness pokes through the surface of our comprehension, though 90% of it lurks below. 10% is about all we can take, yet still not enough to change our ways, not enough to link the polar bear stranded on its tiny floe to the steak medium rare on our bone china plate. The zooplankton ingesting the molecules of plastic bag we used yesterday to cart home the romaine lettuce grown in the sunny concentration camp of the Salinas Valley. Lobsters scuttling north to cooler water as longhorn ticks bushwhack their way into new territory, the heroes of some other story, while we buy clothing treated with permethrin or spray our kids with DEET to think ourselves safe from the viruses. Down south, the mangroves know all this, their roots knitted together in a fiber optic system, collecting and sharing data from their leaves, doing their best to excrete excess salt or store it in their tissues, stabilizing shorelines and taming tsunamis until it's all too much, even for experts. Can you hear the musicians? The ones asked to soothe all the passengers? Years from now, they will find one of the rosewood violins, surprisingly pristine, and exhibit it in the Museum of Civilization. We're pretty close to that, but occasionally other things can happen. This is a short little story about something that I stumbled on driving home. I would say a shift to maybe saving, appreciating things in nature. Intersection. As I cruise down the long hill in rush hour traffic, 2 lanes of eagerness each way, I see ahead some object in the road I will need to avoid, a truck muffler perhaps by its size, which cars whiz by and around without slowing down. But as I come closer, I can see it is a large snapping turtle, having left its pond, no longer fecund or starved by a siege of new houses ringing its shore, crossing a border into territory it does not understand, at the mercy of power, its mud-covered carapace now a useless shelter. In a better world, strangers would slow and then stop, backing up traffic both ways despite the clueless horns of entitlement, until this wizened being older than the dinosaurs can plow ahead, one stiff step at a time, this immigrant, this other, the bravest among us getting out of our lives to lend a hand. All right, a couple more poems. I tried to save a family of beavers that had adopted a pond in our town, a pond that my wife and I walked to each day. They were doing fine. They were turning the pond into something magnificent. Herons had started to show up, more turtles, more fish, you name it. And then the town killed them anyway, thinking it was easier. Along the way, I met great people, learned a lot about beavers, Castor canadensis, by the way. Much of it from a great book called Eager by Ben Goldfarb, won a huge science award in 2018. It's a wonderful book, and this poem is dedicated to Ben. Oh yes, and it's my first and so far only rap. This is rap for Castor, for Ben Goldfarb, author of Eager. You got problems out west, you're running out of water. Temperatures rising and the world's getting hotter. Trying to mitigate floods and stop runaway fires. You got water in quantity, but not where you want it to be. You gave us no respect, so what did you expect? You gave us no respect, so what did you expect? You thought a buck-toothed rodent would be better as a hat. So you trapped us and snapped us until you're all that. Too stupid to see that you were fracking up your habitat. You exceeded your need until greed was your creed, had a shizzle vision of your mission to speed a landscape raping you should have been arresting. Now I guess your destiny is manifesting. They call me the beaver. No, not the one by Ward Cleaver. Castor canadensis. Genus? I'd say genius. We shape the contents of the continents. Masters of geology, ecology, hydrology, topology. Our diligence, intelligence, experience, and innate sense could handle any consequence. Now you need us more than ever, brother, if you want to last forever and recover. Looks like you could use a furry godmother, give you pristine streams, replenish all your aquifers, a salmon run, replacing all the damage done, another keystone species where there isn't one. Just keep in mind a beaver battle cry. Wetlands are the best lands, and that's no lie. With us, it's just pond to wetland to meadow to forest, and day or night, oh, the concatenating chorus. So we'll find a damn spot just where you needed one. Now leave it to the beavers, man. We'll get the job done. In fact, if you look at maps of where the fires are out west in all of those states, there are little pockets of green where the fire didn't get them, and they're all beaver ponds, and all the surrounding woods, those are fine. They're not catching on fire at all. It's not dry tinder. Anyway, once you're on a beaver campaign, it's all over. It just takes over your life, I can tell you. All right, one last little poem. This is called Vincent. This is a little poem about a chipmunk. At our house, we feed them from our hands. We have one now called Bentley. It had a bent tail that eventually fell off. We can call this chipmunk. It will come right up to us, eat off my foot, eat off my hand, whatever you want. This is an earlier one called Vincent, and you'll quickly know why. Vincent, the one-eared chipmunk I had fed so many times last year from my hand, so close I could study the tumid wound where his left ear had been, the sucking fly stuck to his striped back, the tiny toenails manicured by rocks, did not return this year. and I imagined all the calamities that chipmunk flesh is heir to. The silent dive of the red-shouldered hawk, the neighbor's wily calico, the fox whose baby squeal electrifies the night, and even plain old age, which is never far off for a chipmunk. And I blamed myself for taming him to the point he trusted this indentation in the big stone atop the wall, that despite his palpitating heart, he might have let down his fidgety guard because of our daily routine. And so now, when he does appear, 3 weeks late, ear hole now healed, and clambers over the rocks and into my hand, all 4 feet, even pausing to eat one of the black seeds as I hold him aloft, what choice do I have but to stop, breathe deeply in the palm of the present, to shuck what isn't and savor what is? Thank you.
I wish I'd written all those poems too. Jeez. The chipmunk. Lighter than light. Beautiful, Steve. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us today. I'm going to introduce Christie Williams, who's going to make a brief announcement.
This is so appropriate that the man to my left and behind me now is scurrying around, setting me up, because I'd like to call him to the podium now. Christopher Greenleaf, won't you please come forward? The Arts Café would like to pay a tribute to Christopher Greenleaf. I'll read to you what we have to present to him. In gratitude and appreciation, the Arts Café Mystic salutes Christopher Greenleaf. For 25 years, he has graced the Arts Café with his expertise and dedication to excellence in sound, lighting, and photography. Moreover, his unflappable mirth, humor, and fellowship have helped establish the Arts Café's reputation among poets and musicians as a soulful and supportive venue. Even his post-show harmonica serenades will be missed. Christopher has made a deep and lasting difference, and the Arts Café is so very grateful to him. Christopher.
Ooh, sip my mouth. Then I'll have to play something. Thank you. Well, Christie has done something to me, so I have to do something to you. If you have Scottish blood or read history of the Anglo world, you know what the 45 means. That is the Battle of Culloden. It is the fall, quick rise and quick fall of Bonnie Prince Charlie and all that sort of thing. Out of it came a bunch of quite wonderful doggerel, verse, poetry, and some music. And there is a tune that is very famous both as a ballad and as quite a quick step dance, Over the Water to Charlie.
So this is Christopher's last show doing our sound. And he's so impressive, if you haven't gathered that already, that we needed 2 people to replace him. So we welcome Jason and Sophie, who are our newest members of our Arts Café Mystic team. And as you know, Christopher is impeccable, and he does not have a hard time speaking his own truth. And he's quite confident that we found the right replacement in Jason and Sophie. So we so welcome you. Now I have the privilege of introducing our musician today, Theodore Mook. I met Ted because my friend Coleman Barks, who's the Broomy translator, was coming to town. And I just kind of thought on the last minute, hey, how about if I try to find him a cellist? And I made a phone call, and somebody said, well, you should call this guy Ted Mook. He's a really great guy. So I did. And Ted said, sure, I'm not doing anything. I'd love to. And then that happened 4 or 5 more times. Ted is an amazingly accomplished cellist. After 30 years of a professional life in New York, working for the Philharmonic and teaching extensively around the world, the cello really for the last 40 years. Ted made a huge change in life and left New York, bless him, and moved to Hope Valley? What's the town? Wood River Junction. Bought an old church that belonged to his master teacher. And so he's a friend and a neighbor. He's taught recently in Rhode Island. And right now he does private lessons out of his home, where he also runs a small well, he used to be able to, Ted, and you will again. But just gatherings, every once every 3 months, a group of people coming together for some chili and some salad and whatever musicians Ted could pull together, many of them among his students. So he's a brilliant musician, and also just the most amazing man. Welcome, Theodore Mook, to our beautiful setting.
Thank you.
You want to sit and talk?
No,
Okay.
I said enough. After many months of not performing, Lisa called me and said, can you play a little? And I said, sure. And I had a problem because it's sort of like a starving person falling into a Scarsdale bar mitzvah. There was just too much to do, so I had to pare things down, and I hope I did. But with the idea of green and ecology, I brought 2 cellos. There's always room for cello. One is very old. This one happens to be very old. And we had a fellow that was helping me glue it together one time. It's not rosewood, but it is built in 1740. And we counted the rings on the instrument and learned that the piece of wood that it is comprised of the top was 90 years old when it was cut. And that was old wood to begin with. So we're thinking that this wood of this cello was probably, started in the 1600s. Very old wood. And the second cello is a little bit younger. It's only 120 years old. And the music I'm playing starts from about 1685 and goes up to the modern era. I'm going to play all the 6 pieces that I'm going to play in rapid succession in case you're tempted to applaud. Don't. It starts with Domenico Gabrieli, one of the very earliest of cello solos, goes to J.S. Bach from some of the cello suites. 2 movements from a Benjamin Britten solo suite, and then, if there's time before the sun sets, a little bit of a very flamboyant scherzo by Donald Martino. And just so you know, the sun and these instruments are not really good friends, so I have to, especially this old poor thing, it's going to come out of tune, so I have to tune a lot, so forgive me for that. Thank you.
Just a couple of announcements, mostly just a lot of thanks. Again, we want to thank our friends at the Mystic Museum of Art. I really need to thank my board and my volunteers. We're down to just a few volunteers, with many people afraid to come out. So I really have to thank Melanie and Julia and Christy and Kate and Jim and Christopher and John. So thank you so much for the support that you do. These folks are here setting up tables and stacking them and moving them and picking up tablecloths, and I'm very, very, very lucky to have the support that I have. So thank you all. We are hoping to move ahead with a November event. Right now, we're looking at dates with the museum. Again, we want to keep it outside rather than moving inside. So within a week, we'll be letting you know if we are going to move ahead with the November event and what that date and alternative date would be. And now I get the honor of introducing Margaret Gibson. Margaret Gibson she's a giant in the literary world. There's no other way to say it. I met her as a friend of Christy and Kate's across a table, and in the couple of years that I've gotten myself familiar with her work and seen her work in the world, I'm just really so humbled to know her as a friend. Margaret's published 12 books of poems. She's been the recipient of so many prizes. Pushcarts. Her book Vigil was a finalist for the National Book Award. She's won the Melville Cain Award. She's won the Lamont Poetry Award. 5 of her books. She doesn't put this in her own bio because she's that humble. But 5 of her books have been nominated for Pulitzer Prizes. I don't really know anyone that could say that, not even Mary Oliver. Margaret has been at work as the State Poet Laureate of Connecticut. She's 1 year into her term and immediately went to work and applied for a grant from the Academy of American Poets, designated for state poets to get to work in their state. So her timeliness is amazing. We couldn't need green poetry more than we need it right now. She's largely subsidized our event, and we're partnering with Margaret and her environmental initiative again in the spring. We do our annual student show, and when we do our student show in the spring of 2021, the students will be writing green poetry, and that's what we'll hear from. Margaret's next book is coming out in 2021, so you can be sure we'll have her back here to read from The Glass Globe, which is the forthcoming book. Margaret, come on up and grace us. Thank you for being here.
So the wind is up, as we knew it would be. I fully expect the Titanic to come down the river when I'm reading, and then we're going to get Tad back and get him to do on the cello, "Nearer, My God, to Thee," or something. But first of all, let me stay close to the mic and thank Lisa and everyone who for years and years has been involved either in the audience or Christy, Kate, Melanie Greenhouse, all the staff, Christopher, who huzzahs, we're going to miss you. But this has been an amazing green cafe. So when cafe, the Mystic Arts Cafe. And so when I got the grant and was looking to support 4 green cafes throughout the state that would focus on reading poetry about the environmental global crisis that we're in, or simply about what we call the natural world, or which I prefer to call the living world, of course I thought about the Mystic Arts Cafe, which has been is set up and has an audience and has a history of loving poetry. I think that's the wind. I'm not sure I can do much about that. So I'm just going, before we get all blown away, I'm going to read some poems here. I think both Joan Hoffman and Steve Strait, whom, by the way, I want to thank for coming really considerable distance from South Windsor and even further from Collinsville. Thank you all for coming to read poems. It was just an immense pleasure to be on the program with both of you. So, do that. Maybe this is better? Yeah. Woohoo. You did good. Thank you. Thank you. Both Steve and Joan mentioned awareness, either in a remark or in a poem, when they were up here. And I want to just say that awareness or paying attention is essential as a first step toward good poems, good writing, and it's essential in compassionate living. And when I think about writing poems, reading poems, supporting poems, celebrating poems about the natural world or the living world, I'm talking about paying attention to what is now, but also paying attention to warning signs, sounding the warning. If we want to be in a world that remains stable and creative, and I mean that's us too, we're not separate from it. The more you pay attention to the natural world, the more you pay attention to your own mind, the more you pay attention to your own heart, you realize that we are not separate, although we live many, many times as if we are. The nice thing about paying attention is that sometimes you can't avoid it. I'm going to start with a poem in which something I needed to pay attention to came right onto my doorstep. And other times, you find things occur to you, or you see things almost as it were by accident, or after having not seen them for a long time. But I'm going to start out with a little poem called "It Doesn't Take Much." I live in Preston, by the way, in the woods. There's a pond nearby, but not too near. It doesn't take much. On my front door stone, a dead frog. It's stretched out long, its slender legs a mottled green, its belly cream white, a blossom of blood on the stone. How did it get here? Why did it die? It doesn't take much to make me see how little I know about the simplest things. I'll tell you stories, of course, that it was possibly a fisher cat, or more likely was dropped accidentally by an owl, or a startled hawk, or a heron. Or is the frog an ambassador sent from the wetland world? I lift it gingerly, the frog still limber, no rigor mortis, not yet, and I put it aside in a paper bag to take out later for burial. I have a dog with a keen nose. But when I come for it, the paper bag is rustling, is jumping, alive. And so I carry the frog far down to the pond's edge and settle it into the shade of the cattails. When death arrives on your doorstone, you think about it. When death turns out to be life, injured life, you're glad and turn back to your own. Okay. This poem takes place in in my bedroom, looking into a mirror, where one morning I had a surprise. Reflection, looking straight ahead. This morning I have to confess mirrors confuse me, especially the small one over the dresser that faces the open bedroom door, so that all this while, years really, brushing my hair, choosing an earring, looking straight ahead, I haven't noticed that at least half of the painting over the sofa in the next room floats in the mirror, a field and sky at sundown, right there, next to my face. I know that to look is one thing, to see another, that it's more than a matter of angle, focus, stance. But to think that all the while I've been leaning in close, the painting has been there, field and sky. And noticing them now, finally I'm drawn to consider what else daily I live with and don't notice, afraid to, perhaps. As a child, I drift into wondering, what if, after the final conflagration, erasure, rapture, or roiling upheaval, what if only I survive? Can you hear? What if only I survive? How then would I find food or grow it? Make a brick, understand gravity, list the elements, solve an equation, sketch an atom, hum the whole of Beethoven's Ninth, recall a wren. And why must I pare myself down to the last one left before I admit the fields and the woods already are silent, as nearly silent as they are in the painting only partially reflected in the mirror, where next to my face, summer field and horizon lie close, so close we share the same skin, the same sun already gone down gold behind dark cedars, leaving the sky lit. The immense painted sky drizzled with delicate black smatter, with tiny motes that fall on everything equally. And I didn't notice them before. I didn't see them. Until now, here they are, falling into a mirror in which simply to see myself there rouses the question each breath of mine has tried to conceal. Why must I die? Thank you. So there's separation and suddenly seeing something in both of those poems. We are not separate from the natural world, and actually poetry is a record of that relationship. And when you think about it, a lot of the poems that we've heard tonight celebrate relationships with other things, beavers, chipmunks, deer, celebrate relationship with just what is around us and supports us. But we've lost a lot of that relationship. You don't really realize how noisy it is in town, do you, till you start sitting listening to cellos and poets, and then, whoom, here it comes up the river. And they think they're out in nature, by the way. So. All right, I'm going to read a poem called Once that celebrates women in the natural world. Once there were women who read books in trees. I've heard it from their own lips, these stories, and I was one of them. I lay back as a child in the Y branch of a dogwood tree, sun in the green leaves, a rain of petals on the grass beneath me. Once, women washed in the watershed rainfall of streams that tumbled down mountain and into the plains below. I knew a woman who dug herself a well, another who raised rabbits and killed them clean, skinned them as I might slip off a winter coat I no longer need. Once there were women who worked fields in the hot sun, and afterwards, their work done, roamed the edges where field met forest, where at sundown the deer roused after dozing for hours in the chicory and Queen Anne's lace. I know one woman who spoke her poems aloud, standing at the edge of a field of tall grasses, so that the rabbits and the mice and the red-tailed hawks could hear words on the wind. And the wind rose and a thunderstorm broke. She tells how lightning took down an oak the way she'd take a lover. Once there were women who fed themselves on roots, who drank milk straight from the udders of wild oxen, who knew herbs and mushrooms, simples and cures. These days, if anyone thinks of these women at all, it's to dismiss them as primitive or pagan or savage. But I know how they held their bodies as they walked their just once on this earth. I know how they wept and laughed, how they loved. Once there were salmon, meadowlarks, herds of elk. Once there were groves of oaks to pray in. Once there were avenues of plane trees in the cities. Once there were words with wings. Once, when thunderstorms billowed and broke, the thick air cleared out, the air rinsed clean. Once farm, once forest, once field, once city, bridge and tower. Once words had roots that entered the deep earth as a lover might enter a woman. Once there were women who read books in trees. I want to just mention that there are in the audience lots of poets, musicians, and people who love the natural world. These are just the ones I know of. I don't know the rest of you, all of you. But Christie Williams is here, of course, and Christine Beck, who was once the town poet laureate of West Hartford. Who else did I see? There's somebody here. Lana Orphanides right there. I want to mention, too, that Ann Norwalk, who for, I think, 20 or more years was the head of Avalonia Land Preserve, is here, and also Teresa Eichel, who's the new Program and Development Director there. These are people who are supporting the natural world by saving it, by preserving it, and making it possible for you to get out in it without motors right behind you. There are lots of you out there, and I just want to thank you. Richard Hartice is here, back there. I just want to thank you all for being here and supporting green poetry and the world we live in. I'm going to read a poem called Corn Mask. It's an Iroquois corn mask, and it's on. I meant to bring it, but it's on the wall at my house at the moment. The poem describes it when it starts off, so I hope you can see it. I had to read it because it's about a mask, and masks these days. But also because the poem at the end says some things about the natural world that I think that I need to hear. The poem is called Corn Mask. It hangs on a white wall, its face a deft weave of corn husks. I stand close to it face to face, and even so I can't quite look eye to eye with it, its deep-set vision set at a tilt that reminds me of the springtime tilt of the earth's own axis and large spirit. The nose is a small, blunt cob, no ears, hair a rustle of corn shucks where the maker of the mask tied off the weave. Mouth a tubular pucker, a wind hole for howl or earth call, or shamanic cry. And because I have always wanted to be a footpath for spirits, I take it down from the wall and slide my fingers along the weave of its skin. I take off my clothes and put my face into its face. Now the moment smells of husk and dust. It smells of smoke. What kind of smoke are you, I ask? Not long ago in Paradise, California, the fires burned so hot they cremated what once had flesh and hair, bone and tooth and claw. The world is still burning. The world is burning and can't smell its own smoke. But as I breathe in the smoke and the silence, it speaks, The mask speaks in a vernacular of silence. No, I reply, I don't want to live in the past or in the dream of a future Earth that somehow survives us. I have taken off my clothes and put on this mask of husks and dust because I want to live now, in accordance with laws that once linked the body of corn to the earth and to the sky, laws that once guided rainstorms, migrations, and seasons. I want to be in touch with laws that govern electrons, wetlands, mitochondria, and geothermal fields, with the laws that may still guide sperm whales on their journeys through the seas, their underwater trumpet calls the loudest on the planet. I want to respond to this life with the sanity that times the arrival of bees with the breakout of blossoms, to live with the precision and chemistry that makes an oak tree root sensitive to the welfare of neighboring oaks. I want to live in the spirit of strict pleasure, a form of generosity that allows for an earthbound humanity. Spirit of the corn mask, stay close, stay close. Let me learn, if it's not too late, how to be a creature of the earth, in love with the life of the earth, as if it were my own. Another poem about greed. I love to look at words and see in them the word inside the word. So sometimes this is a visual thing, clear, or sometimes it's a sound thing. So that inside the word immortal, everybody looking at it in your mind, there's the word more. Okay. Greed. Even the fox of legend knows that inside immortal is more. Extinction is a fox skin that rots in the ravine behind the house, whose foundation is eroding. Will you be spared? Will I? What shall we mourn? A river? A flower? A tongue on the spiral galaxy of the body? A peach? Add to that the pain each of us has not acknowledged. Were we less churlish and afraid, perhaps we might investigate how long it takes to imagine Earth without us. How long to sever the link between the word relish and ravish. Thanks. I don't want you to clap for greed. No clapping for greed. Okay, no. Gary Snyder said that we don't have to scare people. What we need to do is make them love the earth. But he said that a long time ago, and I think it's time to scare people a little. And the more you read, the more you find out about global warming or climate crisis, the more you get sometimes some really hair-raising visual images of what an Earth might be like way down the road, hopefully way down the road, but maybe never down the road. Just something to remind you, the Anthropocene is the era we are living in. It's named after us. The Anima Mundi is a fancy way of saying the collective unconscious or the mind of the cosmos. My friend, a wonderful poet, Chase Twitchell, wrote a poem called Touch Me Not, in which she says in the poem that she knows that after this world, after our time on this earth, the earth will keep going. We may be gone, but the earth will keep going. But she says, but there will be another But she says, but I love this one. That's what she says in the poem. I love this one. But I'm going to scare you a little, I hope, with a vision of another one. Oh, and the keep is the part in a medieval castle where the owners used to tuck themselves away when, the enemy was coming to attack the castle. The poem is called The Keep. When the epoch we call the Anthropocene is stored in the keep of the anima mundi, when our civilizations are compressed into a geologic layer the width of a wine glass, there will yet be mountains in the distance, and when the air eventually clears, also stars in the steep interludes. No birds, not even their disembodied voices, and only a few clouds left behind to tarry against a magenta sky in recumbent shapes that may resemble humans, then ferns, then colossal barnacles. No waterfalls, no rivers, root cellars, wrist bones, or lilies. No cantatas, no fugues, no murals, and not one miniature portrait inside a pendant locket. Without us, you ask, will there remain anything unstifled or evolving into what we might call beautiful? Perhaps, if only detected by the micro-lidded facets that will stipple surfaces at night when the wind dies, something that resembles an iridescence that now resembles what we call sentience. The worst thing just happened that a poet can ever happen up here, and I saved it. You want to know what that is? I didn't bring the second page of the poem. I had to remember it. All right. Oh, it's over here. You all are a terrific audience, and nobody's freezing, right? Not yet. Okay, I'm going to read two more. One is this, the first one, both of them are blues songs, or what I think is a blues song anyway. And the first one's called Earth Mama Blues in the Time of Climate Crisis. It's a love poem. When the earth is on your mind all the time, or climate crisis on my mind now a lot, even the smallest things that happen will remind you, like that frog on the doorstep, or whatever. And what's fueling all of that, and what's fueling the latent grief in all of these, in some of these poems, is love. We have to love the earth. We have to love ourselves on the earth. And so this is a kind of perhaps slightly overreaching love poem called Earth Mama Blues. I want to hold you, Earth, in a long embrace. My arms so encompassing and strong you'll mistake me for the capacious belt of the equator. I want to stretch until my head, oh yeah, it reaches the northern pole, and my big feet touch the whole way down polar south. I want to reach for a mango with one hand, with the other pat a snow leopard on a Himalayan ledge. I want us both to purr beneath a canopy of stars spread so wide there's no horizon. I want to hold on to the broad, muddy river and take my fill. Papaya, pomegranate, iceberg, daffodil, musk, deer, mossy stone, rippling field, and freewheeling sunsets so potent I can sing it loud, this love song. Sing for days on end, sing for eons if I must. Baby, baby, I want to be sky so wide, a million thunderstorms can tuck inside me, each thought of mine revealing itself in lightning bolt brilliance. I want you whole, hot-blooded, personal, and mine, all mine. Wait till here comes that. And it's just here that the key shifts from major to minor, that my love song slides into lament. Maybe, baby, it's too late to say I'm sorry. Maybe you're done putting up. Oh, but don't go your way without me. I'll sing every blessed torch song, every hillbilly jazzed up, chilled out, rock and roll blues song going strong all at once. I'll belt it out, baby. Then echo all the backup voices in their homegrown mother tongue, sha-la-la-la-la. I'll sing to you in the ribbon fall of rain, in old growth, in quaking bogs, in prairie and oasis. Oh yeah, I'll sing it out in volcanic decibels, a geyser force from deep down geothermal fields. Then scale it down to a whisper that happens on its own when a human being senses what being human is. I love you, baby. Just stay. Please stay. Okay, last poem. What do I do? Thanks. That really was almost the last poem. Okay, woo. All right. This is not a COVID era summer poem. It was written before we began this incredible relationship with the COVID virus, distanced relationship. But some friends had come over to my house and had been around, and then the next day there was a big storm at night, and the next day I was there by myself. So that will explain the title, In and Out of the Next Day, Lonesome Blues. Next day, sky blue, burnished maple, cool breeze, wet bench where I sit and actually hope to remember last night's rain on my skin. A downpour rain after long drought, the heat just leaning its weight into late September. And it's the next day, lonesome blues coming on. Yesterday, good company, good talk, good food. But now I'm alone and feeling it, spoiling sweet solitude by noting how quiet the fields are now. The birds long gone to breeding grounds far south, following an innate compass into the silence. And they're done for. The rainforest hacked into fields that graze beef cattle, the fields eroded and the forests even further felled. So tell me, who are we who fell and dismiss so unfeelingly? The sun is old, rain old, and I'm old. At times wise enough to relish this old love, first love, ancient and unending love. And I've actually lost the second page of this poem. And it's too long to remember, but this ancient and unending love is what the poem ends with a litany that reminds myself, and I'm speaking directly to the earth at that point, that the earth is mainstay and source, my oldest and most withstanding love, my oldest lover. And I'm sorry I can't read it to you, and I don't know what happened to these pages. I think someone is trying to tell me to keep my reading in bounds. I'm not sure. But anyway, I apologize for that. And there's the train. Perfect way to end. Thank you.
The reading was extraordinary. I know some of you are chilly. I hope you're not too chilly to make it back that way, where all three of our poets have books for sale. Joan, Steve, Margaret, Theodore, what an extraordinary afternoon you've given to us all. So with huge gratitude and to each of you for showing up. She's got it? Okay, here we go.
This has got to be a first. All right. So shall I read the whole thing over again? All right. Yes? No? Yes. All right. I tell you. In and out of the next day lonesome blues. Next day, sky blue, burnished maple, cool breeze, wet bench where I sit and actually hope to remember last night's rain on my skin. A downpour rain after long drought, the heat just leaning its weight into late September. And it's the next day lonesome blues coming on. Yesterday, good company, good talk, good food. But now I'm alone and feeling it, spoiling sweet solitude by noting how quiet the woods are now. The birds long gone to breeding grounds far south, following an innate compass into the silence. And they're done for. The rainforests hacked into fields that grazed beef cattle, the fields eroded and the forests even further felled. So tell me, who are we who fell and dismiss so unfeelingly? The sun is old, rain also, and I'm old. At times wise enough to relish this old love, first love, ancient and unending love that fills me whenever I look up at the sky or down at the tumble of leaves onto the grass. Here I am, alone and feeling it. And still the earth as I have known it shimmers with wood thrush, white moths, wolf trees, wheat fields, ocean. I know nothing's everlasting, but there are ways to live in a deep down, self-forgetting, self-sustaining silence wide as the sky is, and to know in the great heart's faithfulness, despite everything, this earth has been mainstay and source, summit and store, my splendid sorrow and enduring joy, my oldest and withstanding love. Thank you.
Okay. Now they're coming to arrest her. So let's give it up again, please, for Steve, for Joan, for Margaret, and for Theodore, and of course for each of you. Thank you so much for being here. Stay in touch to see what we're going to do for November. And those of you, Melanie, I'm going to put you on the spot, but those of you who are not, because there are many new faces, if you're not on our mailing list, if you could just, Melanie will take your email address down as you leave. Thanks again for coming. What a beautiful afternoon. God bless this green earth.